Greetings, this is J.R. Dickey. Thanks for tuning in to our podcast. And by the way, don't forget our website, graceandtruth.net. I hope you're having a great day, but if not, hang with me. It's about to get better. Okay, this devotion is called Escape from Fear, and it's part 1 of 2. Let's get started. So Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. It's in Genesis chapter 32. Now, here we have 2 verses just tucked into the recording of Jacob's journey, leaving Laban and making his way back home. They don't seem to connect until you step back from the narrative and rehearse the course of Jacob's life. As a young man, his mother coaxed him, if you would, into deceiving his father, obtaining the family blessing, and consequently so angering his older brother that he had to escape to Haran or die. He was terrified of Esau. There he learned the true meaning of deception, living and working for his uncle, who tricked him into hooking up with his older daughter, Leah, and over the course of some 20 years of service, changed his wages 10 times and not raises. So when Jacob finally left Laban together with his family, it was another escape. When his uncle chased him down and demanded to know why he had fled, the Bible says in Genesis chapter 31, "Then Jacob answered and said to Laban, 'Because I was afraid, for I said, perhaps you would take your daughters from me by force.'" Well, God had warned Laban in a dream to play nice, but clearly he wasn't happy, so they parted, the two of them, Jacob and Laban, with a truce of sorts. And next, Jacob, moving on through the hills of Gilead towards his old home, got news that really shook him. He sent messengers ahead to advise his alienated brother that he was coming back home. But to his dismay, word came back that when Esau had learned of his approach, he responded by coming with 400 of his men. Jacob thought that his payback had come, that Esau was going to do him in. As a consequence, he desperately prayed for God's deliverance. But then his Jacob brain began scheming again. He sent presents of sheep, goats, camels, and cattle forward to appease Esau, and then split his own company up, thinking that if one was captured, that the other part could escape. Then, with his weary mind tired from all the fear and turmoil and scheming, he separated himself to try to get some peace. But a man showed up and wrestled, yes, literally wrestled with him all night. And Jacob wouldn't quit wrestling. He just wouldn't stop. So much so that the man told him, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men, and have prevailed." Genesis chapter 32. A very significant event, for whereas Jacob, the name, means supplanter or heel snatcher, thus a deceiver, Israel, the name, means God prevails, or governed by God, or God governs. It signifies, or signified, a complete change of character. And what happened besides this was also very important. Genesis 32 adds, "Now when he," the man, saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. You see, Jacob had always been all about escaping trouble, escaping fear. And you can bet that as a last resort, that plan was always on his mind. But with a broken hip, that ain't going to happen. For Jacob to be Israel, to be the one in whom God prevails, he couldn't run anymore. He had to trust God. Now, I suggest that this is why those two verses were tucked into the narrative of this event. God had told Jacob to make the trek back home. God knew he was afraid, and God also wanted him to know of his presence, his angels, his man, probably his son, that is, his faithfulness. God blessed him with a new name, which indicated a new nature and a new walk, that is, a limp. Genesis 32 says, "So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved." And just as he crossed over Penuel, the sun rose on him, and he limped on his hip. This is perhaps counterintuitive, but it caused him to face his fear rather than escape again. Oh, Jacob continued at times to act like his old nature, that is Jacob, but increasingly he also learned to trust and submit to God, to act like Israel. Now, we all deal with fear, all the way back to Eden. Sin made it a part of our DNA, if you would. And God's remedy is still a new creature, as in 2 Corinthians 5:17, look it up, and a new walk, as in Isaiah 40:31, trusting and submitting to him in love. 1 John 4:18, wonderful verse, says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect or complete in love." Now may the Lord grant you peace in the midst of any storm and faith to trust him. Look for our next podcast, and may you realize more of his grace today.